At Europe's store, thousands are seeking refuge but facing serious roadblocks along the way. We'll have reports from Hungary, where anger and frustration are building among migrants, and Germany, where many hope to start over. Also ahead, a major victory for US President Barack Obama. Minutes ago, he got the Senate support needed to keep Congress from stopping the Iran nuclear deal. Still, the president's top diplomat is about to make one more pitch to win over skeptics, both at home and abroad. We'll hear what Secretary of State John Kerry has to say.
Live from CNN Center, this is Connect the World.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade at the CNN Center, live in Atlanta. This hour, we are expecting US Secretary of State John Kerry to speak about the world powers nuclear agreement with Iran. These are live pictures from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, where Kerry will make those remarks. We'll bring that to you live when it happens. And as we mentioned, that speech follows a huge victory for US President Barack Obama. Democratic Senator Barbara Mikulski of Maryland says she will support the Iran deal. Here's why that matters. The majorities of both the Republican-controlled House and Senate are expected to vote against the agreement, setting up President Obama to veto that move. With Mikulski's support, the White House has at least 34 senators on its side, the number required by the Constitution to sustain the president's veto. Now, Secretary of State John Kerry is about to give that speech on the deal in Philadelphia right now. Let's listen in.
16-0 vote from the Foreign Relations Committee, the best, strongest face of America to the rest of the world, as opposed to a 9-7 situation in which somehow or other a treaty or significant agreement was eked out. This is still a very, very important principle. And this is why it is a genuine pleasure to be with Secretary Kerry today, to note that here is a man who not only has served in the Senate, but was a candidate for President of the United States in 2004 and barely lost by a few electoral votes. Came back and continued that service as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and now since 2013 as our Secretary of State, indefatigable in his travel and in his work. It is a genuine honor and a personal privilege to introduce to you today my friend, Secretary John Evans Kerry.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. We're going to go down this way and please go ahead. Dick, thank you so much for a generous introduction. I'll say more about it, but I want to say good morning to all of you here. It is great for me to be able to be here in Philadelphia. I am delighted to see so many young people with us. I know school has started, and I know the choice between coming here and sitting in class was a very tough one. We're glad you made the choice you did. I am particularly grateful that Senator Lugar chose to come here this morning in order to introduce me and to reaffirm his support for this agreement. But I'm even more grateful for his service to our country over a course of a lifetime. As a former colleague of his on the Foreign Relations Committee, which he referred to in his introduction, I can bear witness that Dick Lugar is one of the true legislative pathfinders of recent times, with a long record of foreign policy accomplishments. And what he and Sam Nunn did is a lasting legacy of making this world safer. He is also someone who has consistently placed our country's interests above any other consideration. And he has a very deep understanding of how best to prevent nuclear weapons from falling into the wrong hands. He is one of our experts when it comes to that judgment. So it is appropriate that the Senator is here with us this morning, and I think every one of us here joins in saying thank you to you, Dick, for your tremendous service. It's also fitting to be here in Philadelphia, the home ground of this absolutely magnificent center to the Constitution, the Liberty Bell, and one of our nation's most revered founders, Benjamin Franklin. And I must say, I never quite anticipated, but this is one of the great vistas in America, and to be able to look down and see Independence Hall there is inspiring, I think, for all of us here. I would say a quick word about Ben Franklin. In addition to his many inventions and his special status as America's first diplomat, Franklin is actually credited with being the first person known to have made a list of pros and cons, literally dividing a page in two and writing all of the reasons to support a proposal on one side and all of the reasons to oppose it on the other. And this morning, I would like to invite you, all of you, those here and those listening through the media, to participate in just such an exercise. Because 2 months ago in Vienna, the United States and 5 other nations, including permanent members of the UN Security Council, reached agreement with Iran on ensuring the peaceful nature of that country's nuclear program. As early as next week, Congress will begin voting on whether to support that plan. And the outcome will matter as much as any foreign policy decision in recent history. Like Senator Lugar, President Obama and I are convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that the framework that we have put forward will get the job done.
You were just listening to US Secretary of State John Kerry there. The speech billed as a major policy speech on the Iran nuclear deal. He set out what he called the myths, to dispel what he called the myths about this deal. He said, without this agreement, Iran will have several pathways to a bomb. But he said, with this agreement, they will have none. He added that key elements of this agreement will not last 10 to 15 years or even 25 years, but the lifetime of Iran's program. To the critics, he said Nobel-winning scientists had congratulated President Obama on a scientifically sound agreement. Secretary Kerry went on to say that sanctions alone were not getting the job done, not even close. Now, in regards to Iran's hardliners, he said those who want the deal to fall apart are the most hardline extremists in Iran, and their opposition should tell you all you need to know. He again reiterated that this deal is not based on trust, saying critics tell you you can't trust Iran. Well, guess what? There's not one single word, one single sentence, one single paragraph about trust. Now, for more on this, we're going to bring in emerging markets editor John Defterios to talk through all of this. Now, John, in terms of lifting sanctions, John Kerry also addressed that. Now, a lot of analysts have said that when sanctions are lifted, Iran stands to gain somewhere in the realms of $100 to $150 billion. Secretary Kerry said it's closer to $50 billion in 6 to 12 months after the sanctions start to be lifted. What do you make of that? What's your assessment?
Well, there's 2 different categories here that we're talking about, Lynda. The $100 to $150 billion would be foreign direct investment to be coming into the country. What Secretary Kerry was talking about is the frozen assets are tied up in banks overseas because of the sanctions regime that was introduced in 2008 and even tightened all the way till 2014. Let's remember that the noose tightened, particularly in 2011, to restrict banking regulations and the opportunity for Iran to trade within the global SWIFT system. So there is no ability to trade in dollars officially for the Iranian economy. And in fact, Secretary Kerry made it very clear there is a trade-off here to sign on to this 159-page document and to avoid any sort of violation from Iran. They'd have to have some easing of the sanctions here. That's what the expectation is, in fact, here on the ground in Tehran. People were looking very carefully at the words of Secretary Kerry this evening here in Iran and trying to push the ball into the goal and having that final vote from Barbara Mikulski, the Democrat from Maryland, to make President Obama have a veto-proof vote within the Senate to push this thing through. So there is a trade-off here. The assets were tied up because of the sanctions. And Secretary Kerry did acknowledge that there'll be easing of those restrictions to release those funds, $50 to $55 billion, but with guarantees they don't go outside of Iran to fuel some of the concerns that allies in the region, particularly Israel and those in the Gulf states, have.
Okay, John Defterios, Emerging Markets Editors, thank you very much for your analysis. And as we mentioned, Secretary John Kerry there trying to push and sell this deal, this Iran nuclear deal, to the American people. Now, the American lawmakers here are expected to vote on that deal in the coming weeks. And the president now has all senators needed, 34 senators needed to get his veto through on that. I'm Lynda Kinkade. That was Connect the World. Thanks for watching.